In the golden age of a mighty kingdom, there ruled a powerful monarch known as King Aldrich the Proud. His empire stretched across vast lands, guarded by towering castles and fearless knights. The people once admired him for his courage and ambition, but over time, admiration turned into fear. Aldrich believed his success was not a blessing, but proof of his own superiority. He ignored wise counsel, silenced critics, and demanded absolute obedience. In his heart grew a dangerous seed, arrogance. From the grand halls of his palace, King Aldrich would gaze upon his lands and declare himself chosen by destiny. He dismissed his advisors, including the loyal and wise Lord Cedric, who warned him that power without compassion would lead to ruin. But the king laughed at such words. "A lion does not bow to sheep," he would say. His court echoed with forced laughter, but outside the palace walls, the people suffered under heavy taxes and cruel laws. Whispers of injustice spread through villages and marketplaces. As years passed, neighboring kingdoms began to resent Aldrich's growing dominance. Instead of diplomacy, he chose intimidation. Instead of alliance, he chose conquest. His armies marched under banners of pride, believing their king invincible. But pride blinds even the strongest rulers. In the north, a coalition of rival kings united, forming a powerful alliance led by the strategic and calm King Rohan of Eldoria. Unlike Aldrich, Rohan ruled with balance and wisdom. He understood the value of humility. When news of the alliance reached Aldrich, he exploded in fury. "No one dares challenge me," he thundered. Against the advice of his generals, he rushed into war without preparation. His overconfidence clouded his judgment. The battlefield that followed would become known as the Battle of Greyhaven, a clash that would decide the fate of the empire. The morning of the battle was thick with fog. Aldrich rode at the front, wearing shining armor, believing victory was certain. But the alliance forces had planned carefully. They anticipated his aggression. Traps were set. Supply lines were cut. As the battle raged, Aldrich watched in disbelief as his army faltered. For the first time, he felt the unfamiliar sting of doubt. By sunset, the once mighty royal army was shattered. Thousands were lost. Survivors retreated in chaos. Aldrich barely escaped with his life. The king who once stood unchallenged now fled under the cover of darkness. The defeat was not just military, it was symbolic. The illusion of invincibility was broken. Back in his capital, unrest erupted. The people, already burdened by years of oppression, saw weakness in their ruler. Protests filled the streets. Even members of the royal council began to question his leadership. Lord Cedric, though still loyal, confronted the king one final time. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "strength without humility leads only to isolation. The kingdom does not need fear. It needs compassion." For the first time in his life, Aldrich listened. Alone in his chamber, he removed his crown and stared at his reflection. The face looking back was not a godlike ruler, but a tired man who had confused dominance with greatness. He remembered the early days of his reign, when he truly wished to serve his people. Somewhere along the way, ambition had turned into pride, and pride into tyranny. Determined to change, Aldrich stepped before his people the next morning without armor, without grand ceremony. He publicly admitted his mistakes, an act unheard of for a king of his stature. He reduced taxes, restored rights, and sought peace with neighboring kingdoms. He even sent a message to King Rohan proposing dialogue instead of war. But sometimes, realization comes too late. The damage had already been done. The treasury was empty. The army was weakened. Trust was broken. While some citizens appreciated his attempt at redemption, others believed it was only fear disguised as humility. Rebellions began to rise in distant provinces. Foreign powers watched closely, waiting for the final collapse. Months later, a second invasion came, this time unstoppable. Without loyal support or strong defenses, the capital fell. Aldrich was captured, not by enemies, but by his own former generals who believed the kingdom needed new leadership. As he was led away from the palace he once ruled with absolute authority, Aldrich did not resist. He had finally understood the lesson that power had failed to teach him. True greatness is not measured by fear, but by service. True strength is not domination, but wisdom. And true leadership requires humility, before it is too late. The kingdom would rebuild under new guidance. Peace would slowly return. But the story of King Aldrich became a timeless warning told to future rulers, a reminder that arrogance may build empires, but only humility can sustain them. And so history remembers him not as Aldrich the Great, but as the king who learned humility too late.